It's open.
All right, boom, here we go. Holy happy hour, Batman. And Happy New Year. I cannot believe it is the first episode of Holy Happy Hour Batman for 2022. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful New Year celebration and people are out there staying healthy in this crazy time that we find ourselves. I'm Ben. I am an Episcopal priest and co-founder of the All Ports Open Network. On this show, Holy Happy Hour Batman, I am joined by heroes of the gaming and geek world to talk about all kinds of things. Life, faith, game design philosophy, spirituality, personal history, origin, TTRPG origin stories, the industry, whatever comes up here on the show. This week, I am going to be joined by another TTRPG talk show host out there and game designer, Adam Bell. I'm excited to talk to Adam about his new game, Legend Has It, coming to Kickstarter this month. Legend Has It is an anthology myth-making card game where you pull story prompts from books, tell a compendium of stories around a central theme that develops as you play. So stick around, bring your questions to Adam in the chat. I'm really excited about this conversation tonight. It's going to be a great episode. A few things before we jump into the conversation and the show proper. Holy Happy Hour Batman is a production of allportsopen.com. Check out our website for our lineup of podcasts and streams about sharing, making, and talking about great stories with shows like hit audio drama, Weeping Cedars, my own show, my teen superhero show, Delinquent Comics, and all of our other great shows. We've got tons of cool stuff. Stick around tonight after this episode of Holy Happy Hour because if you are watching this tonight on Twitch, we're going to raid right at the end of the show into our network's Monday night actual play game. The Monday night crew is back playing our own Apon Games horror game playtest of The Worst Days. The Worst Days is a horror game about being young. And the Monday crew is playing an amazing setting I'm very excited about. It's an 80s summer camp. There are summer camp counselors in the few, I guess, days before the campers arrive at the camp. And then some horror thing is going to happen. So, stick around. They did character creation already, so now they are basically doing the game proper. They're starting to play. So definitely a good time to jump in. It's early in this particular playtest stream. It's a good time to start watching. And so, yeah, also Monday night has a great cast. You have Apon regulars like Chris on the show, Ashton, who's from Delinquent Comics, plays Soul in Delinquent Comics, and newer players too. The great energy, really enjoy I think you're really going to enjoy the game. So, also, we have a brand new way of watching all of our live content. Actually, you can go to allportsopen.com/live. And that's going to be the best way to watch all of our live content, get to know the cast of our actual play, improv, and discussion streams. So, we have shows almost every day of the week now, and you can find the schedule for that at allportsopen.com. So, another piece of housekeeping I want to plug. I think I saw that we got, we got Lone Ranger there in the chat. One of our Delinquent Comics cast members saying raid, raid, raid. But speaking of Delinquent Comics, if you missed the Delinquent Comics holiday special, friend of this show, Holy Happy Hour, Jeff Stormer, and the host of Party of One podcast and All My Fantasy Children, guest GM'd a holiday massacre game of his own, role-playing game, Mission Accomplished. So we did some Mission Accomplished. It was raucous and ridiculous, and you'll definitely want to check it out. It's very funny. It's also probably the least family-friendly episode of Delinquent Comics we've ever done. I usually let my kids listen to the show, even though it's borderline, and they can't listen to the Christmas special. It's off limits for them. So that's just a warning for you. There's a lot of adult language and content in it, but it is very, very funny. And there's also just way too much of the band Creed in it. So it's very funny, though. And Jeff Stormer is awesome. So make sure you check it out on the Delinquent Comics feed. Okay, so before we get to our interview, however, it is Happy Hour. And Happy Hour means our drink of the week, which we have here up on the screen, as you can see here on my computer screen. I wanted to create a drink inspired by Legend Has It. which is the game coming to Kickstarter that Adam's going to be talking to us about tonight. And so when I was thinking about Legend Has It, and when I was looking at the game and thinking about the idea of myth making, my mind, just because of who I am, it kind of drifted to one of my favorite bars in the world, which is a bar called, it's a Indiana Jones inspired bar called Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar at Disney Springs, the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. And they have a lot of really cool cocktails. A lot of them are inspired by traditional exotic cocktails that I like. And so my mind went to the Hangar Bar, and I went to one of my favorite traditional cocktails that they serve a variation of there, which is the Singapore Sling. This drink here, which I called Chasing a Legend, is my variation of a Singapore Sling. So you've got 3/4 ounces of gin, a 1/4 ounce of Saint Germain liqueur, 1/4 ounce of Grand Marnier, 1/4 ounce of lush grenadine, 1/2 ounce of pineapple juice, and 1 ounce of lime juice. I went heavier on the lime, less on the pineapple because of the lush grenadine. It's like, I don't want to make it overly sweet. Dash of Angostura bitters. So basically, you combine all of that stuff into a shaker with ice, get it really cold, chill it up real good, fill up a highball glass with ice and pour it in, and then top the drink with club soda to taste, basically, or to fill your glass. And then to make it kind of exotic and legendary, you can top it with some sort of edible flower or some other relic which you uncovered while investigating some unexplored world. You could top it with whatever you like, or a cherry or an orange slice. So that's the drink this week. Chasing a Legend, as I said, inspired by the game Legend Has It, which will be coming to Kickstarter this month. And let's see, in about 2 minutes, if you go to my Twitter account, at Benjamin Wallace on Twitter, you will be able to see the recipe card and grab the recipe card for this drink, because it'll go live on Twitter in just like 2 minutes. Yeah, I anticipated wrong by about 2 minutes. I try to time it up with this. So, all right, so there you go. That's the drink for the week, and I'm excited to talk with Adam about the game that inspired it, Legend Has It. So let's go ahead and bring Adam on the show and get our conversation for the week going. So here we go. By the magic of the internet, I will. Yeah, hold on. Before I do that, I got a comment in the chat from Mosberg. We need to get together and go on a holy happy hour drink bender. Yeah, that'll be quite a night. Some of these drinks I made are pretty crazy. But all right, anyway, bringing Adam on the show. Adam Bell, welcome to Holy Happy Hour, Batman. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time to come on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the drink. I don't have any ingredients for cocktails because I just usually drink a beer.
Yeah.
But when somebody makes me a nice cocktail, I like that a lot.
Yeah. So I have to be really careful because I like tiki cocktails a lot. I like exotic cocktails. They all have syrups in them. They'll have a lot of juices in them. And I need to be careful because like I am trying to be more health conscious for my body, especially going into the new year. And so like I really have to watch that.
Watch the amount of
I guess
juice.
it seems true of beer, right? Like I got to watch that too because you know. But speaking of beer, I'm wearing. I tweeted about this earlier. I'm wearing a Cape May Brewing Company T-shirt here in Cape May, New Jersey, and I'm wearing a 2SB Brewing hat. That's a Delaware County, Pennsylvania beer hat here. So I'm rocking some beer rep tonight.
Okay.
You're from from Pennsylvania too, right?
Yeah, I live in Pittsburgh.
Or on the other side.
Grew up outside of the city. Yeah.
Well,
whenever I saw you were in Pennsylvania, I was like, well, where is that? Oh, okay. Other side. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, there's some good beer though out your way.
There is. I moved back to Pittsburgh. Like I said, I grew up outside of the city and then went to college and got a job in Wisconsin for a couple of years and then moved back to Pittsburgh in 2016. There were like very few good breweries and I was kind of disappointed because like Wisconsin does a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Too good of a job, honestly. It's too easy to get beer if you live in Wisconsin and there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was kind of disappointed, but then I noticed, like, I woke up one day, a couple of years ago and was like, wait, where did all these I've been going to these breweries back when that was a thing that wasn't
Yeah.
a public health scare.
Yeah, right,
And I was like,
right.
wait, when did it happen that there actually are there's a lot of good beer here? And I'm happy about it. I'd like to return to those at some point,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, like when it's not. So I was definitely enjoying in warm weather months, like the outdoor brewery thing, and there was a lot of breweries
Mhm.
around here that made really good outdoor spaces because of the pandemic. And actually, 2SP, whose hat I'm wearing, they're really close to me. They're in Delaware County, good friends of mine. They during the height of the pandemic originally, I guess we're now in the new height, but
Yeah, this is
yeah, yeah,
pretty high.
this is the height now, but the beginning, I should say, in the beginning of the pandemic, when there was like the super restrictions and like serious lockdowns, they were doing like drive-through beer events. Like you could like drive. They actually took their like warehouse where they brew, and they made it like a drive-through inside. And what you do is you would pull in, you would tell them your order, like they had like a drive-through menu. You would tell them your order, pop your trunk. They would put the beer in your trunk for you, like sanitized gloves, like hard, like
Mhm.
masks, like full. They would even have like an iPad that they pay on, and they wouldn't even make you like sign for it. They would like it was completely contact free at a distance. You like reached your arm out with your card as far as you could go, and then they stuck out the like receiver for it as far as it could, like you were
Uh,
really far from it. It was hardcore, but deeply
I
appreciated.
Yeah, I miss that stuff
Yeah,
when people took it seriously and you had like
yeah,
real protections
yeah,
and it wasn't terrifying.
yeah.
Because yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not that. I mean, that's a lot of like work, I think, to get that kind of system set up for that brewery. But once
Mm-hmm.
it's set up, like
Oh yeah.
honestly, I if I worked there, I'd rather do that than talk to people.
So
So
I haven't asked them. I wouldn't be surprised though. So like I'm just making a big guess here. This is a complete
mm,
assumption on my part. I don't know this. So I'm going to say it anyway, but I don't know it. If I had to guess, I would guess that during that period of time they made a killing because people
oh yeah,
flocked out for it and like the
it
line
was
was super long.
and those first that first like month, it was kind of tough to get alcohol.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
so the few places that were still selling it like definitely were doing all right. Because yeah, I remember you're in Pennsylvania, so
Yeah.
like the state liquor stores
Exactly.
shut down, and it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
wait, that happened fast, and I gotta ride this out dry. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Exactly. So the a lot of the spirits I make on the show, a lot of the spirits I use on the show for the cocktails I make are from a Philadelphia distillery called New Liberty Distilling. I discovered them during the pandemic because like when the PA liquor stores closed, they were doing like direct shipments and pickups.
Mhm.
And they launched a spirits club, and that's how I got into them. And now they're like they're my ride or die now. They're like like I'm always stocking their spirits. And like I usually, this drink card is a rare exception where I didn't specifically put their Snug Harbor gin on it. I just put gin because I usually,
Mhm.
use their spirits and try to promote them as much as possible, being local. But I'll just say I'm not as dependent on PA wine and spirits anymore as I used to be because I've now learned direct, how to like
Right.
direct from the source, sort of. So
Yeah.
this is a lot more than we usually talk about the drinks at the beginning of the show. But I've been trying to do more happy hour talk on Holy Happy Hour, so I'm here for it. But yeah, so games. I want to talk about games, and I want to tell people because we've got some stuff we want to promote right up front here for you. You have two cool things that we want to promote, so I'm just going to name drop on both, and then we can go into each sort of separately. So you have a Kickstarter dropping this month for Legend Has It. I've talked about that a couple times. I will link while we're chatting, I will link the Kickstarter link so people can be notified on launch for that, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But you had another game I want to talk about first that hit today, right? That launched on Itch today.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about it?
Yeah, so that game is it's called Grasping Nettles. It is a world building game for I usually say like 1 to 6 players, where you are using like a central board to do a bunch of game actions, and you're building a world you're building like a community essentially, and then like telling its story. It's a lot more story driven than I think a lot of just like straight world building games are. And Yeah, it's been a work in progress for about nearly a year. I ran it as a Kickstarter for Zine Quest 3 last year in February with the intention of getting it out over the summer, but life had other plans, and so it took until now, which in some respects I think is better because like I'm ready to have a full time, or like I'm ready to support like a good game release now more than I was when I couldn't even finish a game a few months ago. Um, but yeah, it's called Grasping Nettles. It is out now. I will be producing in-house the zine version of it for everybody that backed that, and then that'll be. Well, I guess you can pre-order it now, but yeah, I'll be producing those and then shipping them to backers, and then it'll be like for a broader sale. I'll try to get it into stores like floatingshare.club and Exalted Funeral and stuff, and you can grab a copy wherever you want. But it's pretty good, and it looks wonderful. You gotta look at the inside. I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, the stuff on itch, if people look on itch, it looks really good. It sounds awesome. I'm super into world building games like that. I say that, and there's a lot more out there than I've played. Like every day I'm
Yeah,
like feel like I'm discovering new world building games. They're so cool. It definitely had, when I first started reading it, I was like, okay, yeah, I feel like I feel Quiet Year vibes to this game, but it seems more complicated, not necessarily in a bad way. So maybe that's not the right word to use. More, there's a lot more
it's
options, I guess.
yeah, it's a little bit more open. I think
Okay.
like the Quiet Year definitely a big inspiration, no doubt. But the Quiet Year, because it's a prompt driven game. Like yeah, I've played it quite a few times, and obviously those prompts are always different. But it's always like, oh, that prompt. I'm excited to
Yes.
see what that
Yes.
prompt does
Yes.
in this.
Yes.
Whereas Grasping Nettles is it's kind of like not creating prompts, but like if there were prompts, it's like they're dynamically created because at the very beginning of the game, like you sit down and you have a little chat and you figure out like, okay, what kind of world are we going to play in? Do we want to do sci-fi today? What do we want to do? Um, and then the very first thing you do is you create three factions that exist in the world. So if you're doing a sci-fi game, maybe you pick like, oh, I'm gonna make a faction and they're like a space motorcycle gang or something like that. And so then those three factions that start, those are going to be like the lens through which you do all of the rest of the game for until you make another faction and like swap it out. So like that can change. Um, so what that means is whenever you then go onto the wheel, which is like the central board that has 11 different game actions, and you choose like the location action. Location means you just make a location. Tell me where, and then because you're doing it with like a specific faction in mind, it's like, oh, tell me like where do they hang out? Where do they? I don't know. What's a cool place that this faction cares about and why? And as soon as somebody does that, then that gets somebody else's brain going, and then they take their turn, and maybe they choose like the character action, and like here's a bartender at that bar you just made. This is the bartender, and also he's got secrets. This is the guy with secrets. And then the next person can be like, oh, I'm gonna move this piece to the issue space. I'm gonna do an issue action. The bar is like on a sinkhole, and that's a problem. Somebody's got to fix it, or this whole community is going to be torn to shreds because the bar is the cornerstone. And so it like kind of evolves this community and story as you play based on like people playing off of each other but contributing their own unique things and then handing it off in that way.
Cool. That sounds really cool. Can you like revisit the same community again in multiple sessions?
Yeah, you definitely can. It so like there's one special action that is the generation action. That's like the thing that I think is most special about the game,
Mm-hmm.
probably, which whenever all three pieces on the board, so all three active factions are like done for that generation, which is usually when you start kind of running out of ideas. It's like, okay, it's time. Let's move ourselves on. You'll like look at everything on the board and take turns addressing things. So it'll be like, oh, we're going to the next generation. First, what does that mean? Let's say, I don't know, a couple decades. Let's say a century. I don't what you choose. Generation can mean whatever you want it to mean.
Sure.
And then you go through each of the different things that you've created. So all of the stuff that you've done already. You look at that bar and you say, well, what happens to this bar? over 10 years? I'm gonna say that it's just still there and it's fine. Or I'm gonna say like it I don't know what else could happen to a bar over 10 years. I feel
Oh
like it's either
man.
there or it's not.
Yeah, I don't know. I was gonna the the weird thing that popped into my head was that it convert. I've seen a lot of churches converted into bars, like in New York City.
Mhm.
So the thing that popped in my head was the opposite. Oh, that's real weird. That bar converted into a
The bar's a
church. Now it's a
church.
church. Or both simultaneously, which I have visited before.
Mm.
So
Wow. They do the beer and the
full.
church
Oh yeah, there's
in
a
one.
there's a famous church in in Brooklyn that exists in a bar on Sundays at 4 p.m.
Wow.
If I could remember the name of the bar, I'd say it. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so once you're done with that, or like right before you start addressing everything, you sit down with each other and you're like, is this the last generation of our session? Like, are we done
Right.
after this? And if it is, like, is this the last time we're playing
Mm,
this community? Like, is this the last session in our campaign?
mm.
And based on that, like, if you say yes to both of those questions, you'll probably like drive everything to a nice, satisfying, like, tie some knots. If you say, yeah, this is the last for today, but let's come back later, then yeah, you can absolutely like come back. You're writing everything that you're creating on note cards, so like it's not that hard to come back and be like, what the hell is it? Why does this just say like the bricks are melting? Oh, right.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool because you can. I like the idea that you can like keep all of your note cards from like every game you've ever played of it. Like if you play the game
mm,
often, you can just have like a little box of index cards,
a
and then you
little
can
pack.
just go through, and then you can reminisce and be like, oh, the bricks are melting. Do I remember when that happened? Kind of, vaguely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did for like writing the itch page. All like the first couple of
Yeah.
paragraphs are just like stories, and I just like was going through all of like the Miro boards from when I had played online
Yeah.
and like trying to remember like what the hell is this? What are the planet was split in half? Oh yeah, it was, and it was a whole problem.
I wondered about
Um,
that one. I thought that one was pretty. That's pretty dramatic.
yeah, that was just like the core setting that we somebody was like, hey, how about it's a planet and it's cut in half,
That's
and
wild. That's wild.
it's it's good.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. So I was curious about the name. What's the
Mhm.
story behind the name of the game?
So a lot of times I like to you might notice that I like to name games after kind of like taking from common sayings or idioms.
Sure.
So like my first major release is called No Stone Unturned, and it's a game about like exploring the consequences both internal and external of adventure. And so it's like, oh, well, you leave no stone unturned because you're out on an adventure, but like maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should have left that stone alone.
Yeah.
So I was looking for something like that because the core of Grasping Nettles is like this community and like the the dichotomy of like the issues. And there's a phrase that I found, an older one that I've never heard anybody say in my life,
Mm-hmm.
called "It's just grasp the nettle,"
Yeah, I'd never heard that.
which right, yeah. Well, so nettles are if you're unaware, you're from Pennsylvania, so I assume you've encountered a stinging nettle.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a plant that if your bare skin touches, it just like gets the weirdest sting possible. But the phrase is supposed to be like, okay, like don't dance around this problem. Like to get that nettle out of the ground, you just got to grasp it and pull it. Like you can't. If you try to go ginger, it's going to touch every piece of your hand, and your hand's going to sting. If you just grasp it, you'll be fine.
Mm.
So it's about it, the title is just kind of approaching the problems, hopefully head on, and seeing what happens next.
Cool, cool. Yeah, it sounds super fun. I like I really like the like wheel. I guess you would call it a wheel, right? Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
wheel. The like
Yeah.
wheel element. I like the symbols. I mean, I noticed that between that and like looking at some of the stuff for Legend Has It, like the idea of like symbols on the games. I just thought they had that gives it a kind of a cool and unique kind of look to it because they can look. So it has a like it has a really cool look to it. I really like the idea of the wheel being central to like the experience of the table. And yeah, I don't know. It just looks very like I really want to bring it to my game club that I run on Saturdays. We love games like this. I think they're really good because they like you can play them as sort of a party game kind of experience. I
Yeah.
find them really good for like our game club, you never know who's going to show up and sit down, right? So like you can have anybody come and play a game like this and just boom, no prep, sit
Right.
down
Yeah.
and play.
Yeah. Hop in.
Yeah.
Uh, which yeah, and they can even come in like halfway through, and you just have to be like, "What do you mean the bricks are melting?" And you'll be, "Oh, come on, it's let me catch you up on that."
Exactly.
Which
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, there was a game I played where he hopped on for a second session, and like a fourth player hopped on, and like he was, he had never played it before because obviously it was released today, and this was a couple months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was like, "Oh, I don't. I'm gonna sit back for a bit to try to understand what the heck you're doing." But like as
Mm-hmm.
soon as it was his turn, he was in, and that was pretty nice to see.
Oh yeah, I bet that's a good feeling, right? Somebody was like
Yeah.
ready to jump in and be invested right away.
Mhm.
Have you? Oh, so I
Yeah,
did. So
that's
another
good.
thing I wanted to ask you about was I like that it has. Do you call them play sets?
They're called quick
That's
nettles,
there you go.
which is a very funny name for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're I hired five very talented designers, game designers, writers, to make like these quick nettles, which are just backdrops. They're worlds that kind of take care of the first handful of turns, depending on, I gave them a word budget, and so however many different game actions they squeezed in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just like here's the pitch of the world. Here is like your three factions. Here's a location. Here's this, and like they just basically give you the answer to a couple of game actions to just allow you to skip the first part of the game where it's like trying to come up with a world, because sometimes you don't want to. Sometimes you just want to jump in.
Well, I was going to ask
And
about the
there's
time of. I was going to ask about the time of that. So, how long does the game usually play?
it really does depend on the players. I mean, there's if I play with one group, it's forever. If I play with another, it's not that long. But I would estimate probably each generation should be an hour or 2 hours.
Okay.
To obviously, it could be more if you really sink yourself into it. But like 1 to 2 hour chunks of gameplay, and then you can do as many of those in a day as you want. Obviously,
So if you use one of the quick nettles and you like skip the first part, is it a substantial time saver?
yeah, I would say because it skips that like kind of awkward part at the beginning of any GM list like world building game
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, what are we doing? I don't know if I'm feeling sci-fi today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something fantasy, and then you do that back and forth for a while, and that can be really fun. I love doing that. Obviously, I make world building games, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you don't want that. And so it skips that. This is another depending on the group. It skips that part and just jumps you right into like Vedita Valetia's Saurus City. Like boom, all of a sudden we're in this city full of these half human, half dinosaur people eating these weird flowers. What the heck are we doing here? And then
Yeah.
you're in.
Yeah,
So probably at least a half hour.
I love that. I love that. So I've been working on a Questlandia 1 hack called Bizlandia. We play tested it on our actually on the Monday night stream that's after this from our network, and I sort of stumbled into basically doing the same kind of thing for that. So like it plays a lot like Questlandia 1. So like the whole first part of it is so for people watching like Questlandia 1, you would like create a world that then you're going to play characters in, right? So
Mhm.
like same thing, Bizlandia is a comedy like workplace situational comedy game. So it's like The
Mhm.
Office but Questlandia. So the first part of the game,
Right.
you're creating a company, you're creating like the funny setting that you're going to play in. That could take a decent amount of time, especially because in all the playtests we've done, people really get into it, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's
It
really
is good, but
and yeah, it's funny. People are like laughing a lot, and that when you're playing a comedy game, I'm finding that like people want to have a lot of side conversation because they're having a good time,
mhm.
and so like you're like talking about your boss this one time in real life at work and things like that, but you might not always have the time for that, right? So like the I made basically like a Facebook mod for it where it's like a pre-generated company with like a Facebook like CEO and like and then when I was looking at this game, I was like I should do some more of those because like the
Yeah.
amount of time you can like kind of like you did with chasing nettles because or grasping nettles because a lot of like the time you can save like doing that like you just might your group might just need that like you might be able to have an
Yeah.
hour and a half for a stream or an hour and a half for a game at the table but not 2 or 3 hours. Like this is a different investment.
Yeah. And then if you like, even just the idea of having these quick nettles both offered like a little bit of extra design space, because of like how weirdly different they all are, which wasn't super intentional. It's just 6 different people wrote one, so they're all super different.
Yeah.
But now anybody like reading the game will read all 6 of these and be like, wow, I could do a lot with this game, I guess. Because the one I have in there is about working at a restaurant. And so like a generation there, I would assume, which it doesn't say, but I assume if anybody plays that one, the generation is going to be like The Weekend.
Yeah.
And then, but
I love
another
that.
one, MV wrote Starless Autumn, which is about sentient plants living in a mech traveling through space. And like, I don't even know what a generation is like, because plants are
Yeah.
a whole different thing.
Could be 100 years, could be
Uh-huh.
150 years. That's crazy.
So it just like gives
Yeah.
people like a little bit of a kick to recognize like, oh wow, what I can do a lot with this game. Like let's think about and changes the way people might approach it, which is great.
Oh, I didn't even think of it that way. That like not only does it provide a play, like a little a little mini sandbox to play in, like a pre-made game for people to jump into, but it also does the job of giving good examples that you can use as inspiration
Right,
for
yeah.
what the game could do.
Yeah, exactly, like an example of play, but like one that doesn't tell you that that's what it is.
Right, exactly. That's real smart. It's really smart. Well, one of the things I thought was really cool about I wanted to ask you about for this game is not just the game itself, but you also released a game design guide, which I haven't seen too often. And I was just curious, like, what brought you to do that? Like, what made you decide you wanted to do that?
The easy answer was I was watching a friend of mine, Spencer Campbell
Oh yeah.
of Gila RPGs, was streaming just looking at different SRDs a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And I was looking at that, and I was in the chat asking like, oh, Spencer, what are you looking for with this? Like, you looking for just fun rules that you can use? And he was like, no, I want to hear what the designer has to say, like why they made the game the way they did. And I was like, I could probably, that sounds fun to write.
Yeah.
And so like while I was watching his stream, I like sat down and started writing that out. And I started it originally as more of an SRD thing where it's like, here are the rules like pulled out, but then like I couldn't get further than a page because the rules are fairly simple in Grasping Nettles, and like you could read Grasping Nettles and figure out how to hack it, I think, without me telling you how. So it became more like, here is what I think each of these mechanics are doing. Why each of these mechanics feels good, why the actions are cool, and with that you can then tweak this game in a bunch of different, however many different directions you want, and get a good result still. Because like there are 11 actions that I've included, but like I could have included probably 11 completely different ones and still had a really good game. I want to see somebody make that game with the 11 different actions. And play it, so I don't have to make it myself.
Well, and somebody might bring right like different actions than you would have thought of.
Exactly, yeah, because it was the last game that I played. Somebody added as a glimpse, which the glimpse is usually meant to be like, here's a picture outside the community that we care about. Like, let's just see the world in context, essentially. And somebody added like VTubers. We were playing on the moon, and they added VTubers that were like telling Earth what was happening on the moon. And I was like, there could just be a culture action in this game that we can get stuff like this all the time.
Yeah.
And there's not. But I mean, maybe that was one that I hadn't thought about for an entire year, like developing the game until then. And yeah, who knows what else is there if you wanted to stick with this core concept of like the community. And then if you wanted to go beyond it, you could do, there's a whole bunch. I want to see it.
That's really cool, and it's really cool to just provide people with like the insights into the game. I can't help but wonder if part of where that came from is because you normally make games, you talk about games, you do it, you do a game talk show like this one. You do your own TTRPG talk show, so like, you talk about games. So I couldn't help but wonder if it was just natural, because you're used to thinking and talking about games, to like talk about your design choices.
Yeah, it's a good question. That feels like a chicken or egg. Do I do the table talk call-in show?
Right.
Because I like talking about games, I mean, doing the show has definitely made me better at talking about the games, and so like made that kind of a breeze to write, for sure. Because if you spend every week talking about like out loud about game design and pretending you know what you're talking about, eventually you kind of know what you're talking about.
That's see, my hope is that by continuing to talk to people who know what they're talking about with game design, eventually I'll know a few things about game design. That's the whole now that's me explaining to the audience as to that's the behind the scenes of this show, and now they know why this
That's
show
why it
exists.
exists.
Exactly. Um, oh, we got a question in the chat. This is a really interesting question from Mosberg, who asked, "Can this game, meaning Grasping Nettles, be played in reverse? Go generations back in time?"
Ooh.
Oh, I kind of love that, actually.
Yeah, I know. I've never thought of it. I don't see why. I think you would have to like do some thinking about it, but I think it would be really cool because like kind of like a what's that movie? Was it Memento?
Yeah, like
Where you
yeah,
like the big twist is what happens at the beginning.
right.
So if you're going backwards, you've created all of this stuff, and then you could just do it, I think. Because if you go backwards, instead of thinking, oh, what happens to this stuff, it's like, well, how did this stuff get here in the first place? Oh, this character, when we go back 20 years, wasn't born yet. So we're gonna got a light behind me I'm not used to having there.
Yeah, I like the idea of like it's like doing history, right? Like it's like excavating the past. So it's like we start with this present day and then we go generations back to unpack like, okay, well, what might have been the origin of that thing? You know, like
Right, yeah.
you know, what was that building before it was the bar? And then like, you know, like kind of just keep unpacking or like, you know, cultural things or well, there's a religious element. One of the options is about religion, right? I noticed that. Meant to bring it up. Where are my notes? I lost my notes.
I think that might be Legend Has It. That you're
Oh
thinking of.
yeah, I'm probably crossing. Yeah, right, there you go. It was. I'm crossing my. But like the idea of like, okay, this thing exists in this world, and then we're gonna kind of like pull at where it originated. I like that idea.
Yeah, I would love to see that, hear about that happening,
There you
play
go.
that. I don't know any of these things.
There you go. Well, why don't we talk about Legend Has It? Because so that's coming to Kickstarter sometime this month. And people can go to Kickstarter. I put the link in the chat. They can go and they can be notified when it goes live. But tell us about the beyond like my little spiel earlier about it being a myth making card game. Tell us about Legend Has It.
Yeah, so Legend Has It came about when I have no concept of time, but some time ago, I was about to say like a month ago, but that might be completely wrong. uh, Sometime last year, I was like, I really would like to make a card game. And I started drawing just on a big whiteboard that I have where I brainstorm games. And I drew like these cards that have these lines kind of intersecting. And I was like, well, what could that be? And I thought, oh, well, storylines. Like I make games about stories.
Yeah.
And storyline is a word.
It is.
So what does that mean? Yeah, Legend has it is a card game. It's going to be like a 54 card deck that basically you are going to be. I want it to be as easy to play or start playing as possible, and because you're just going to be. You have these storylines. The game starts. There's one storyline. Each storyline is going to be like kind of narrated by any given player. And the way they do that is every turn you generate 5 numbers. The first 3 numbers are going to be a page number. The next is going to be a paragraph number, and the next is going to be a sentence number. What does that mean? Well, you're pulling like a real book off of your shelf to generate these story prompts. So you go to that page number, find that paragraph, find that sentence, and then you read it. And then you think, well, what the heck? Like, depending on what kind of book you grab, you could get some really interesting stuff. And so for this very first storyline, like I said, it starts with one. There's just going to be one sentence that like starts this game. And then from there, everything's going to build. Because that storyline will continue into the next card, but eventually it will stop because all of the cards have storylines either starting, stopping, or transitioning up to 2 storylines at a time. So you'll be doing 2. Oh, where's my camera? I'm like waving my hands around at my webcam, which I'm not using.
Oh, okay, fair.
Yeah, so you're going to be sitting around telling stories out of like reading sentences out of your books, and then like telling the table, like interpreting that as an individual to the rest of your table. Like, oh, okay, I read this. I don't know a sentence. I should have brought a book.
Oh
I
no,
don't have
here
any
we can
books
do this.
nearby.
Give me. Hold on, let me go grab a book and give me a prompt. Hold on, we'll do
Okay,
this real time right now.
great.
I'm grabbing a book. I grabbed a book.
Okay, so I've pulled up this playing cards.io link where the cards are. Go to page 213.
So here's the first question I have, and actually we just ran into it right now. What if there's not 213 pages in the book?
So depending on how much math you like, either go to page 13,
Okay.
just drop the hundreds digits,
Yep.
or loop around the hundreds until you get. Just go to page 13.
All right, I'm on page.
That's the easiest way.
I'm on page 13.
Okay, paragraph 9.
Okay.
If there aren't 9 paragraphs, you can loop back to the top and just count.
Okay.
And then sentence 6, same thing, just loop.
Okay. All right. It is. Czech smiled and spoke into the comms. That's the sentence.
Great. And let's say, which mythos type do you want to pretend that we're playing right now?
Oh,
that's the one where you saw that there are religious texts.
Right. Let's do that one because is that one of the types?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do that because of my being Holy Happy Hour. We'll
Holy Happy Hour. Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
So this is going to be the first storyline in our like the canon of whatever our religious belief system is that we're creating whole cloth.
So I interpret the sentence for the big. Okay, so it's Czech smiled and spoke into the comms. Oh, I like the idea that that's. Let me think about this for a second. I like the idea that is a like a liturgical refrain. It's like a line that means something for this religion that we're creating here that you repeat all the time and often say. Czech smiled and spoke into the comms. And what does it mean is really the question. It I like the idea that it has to do with maybe this is a and it could be this civilization could be anything, right? Like
anything. Yeah, you don't establish pretty much anything at the beginning.
Okay.
What you say right now will definitely shape like the rest of what if we were playing a whole game.
This is a civilization that has technology like we can say I don't know exactly what kind of technology it is, but it's at least like radio type technology. At least can broadcast out into the sky. And I like the idea that they have developed this religion that's at the heart of it is this idea of crying out to the heavens through their ability to communicate, so through like radio or something. And they and the founder of their religion was this person named called Czech, and like the idea of speaking out into the comms is like a way of prayer, but it's like literal. It's like literally praying to the sky, to the heavens, and whoever's out there that might hear it.
Yeah, it's like they broadcast their stuff. Cool. Great. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Like how would you have come up with something like that?
Yeah.
Just whole cloth, but like the book just gives you this weirdo line and then hops you in. So like
we have somebody in the chat who wants to do the next prompt. Is there a second?
Oh, sure.
Is there a second we can do to this? Can we do this again? Okay.
So let's say we add the next card.
Okay.
And this case we don't have to get into like the specifics of how the cards are laid, but the cards have, like I said, the next card will be one where this storyline ends and another one begins.
Okay.
So this storyline ends. Remember, each storyline is based on the same book. So this storyline ending will be now page 361, which there aren't.
Right.
361 pages. So because there weren't 317, I don't think, or whatever it was.
Right. So it'd be
page 61.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then paragraph 2, sentence 9 again.
Okay. Lou raised his eyebrows as he looked wide-eyed at his other self. Oh. So yeah. So how do you interpret? So do you interpret this based off the last thing?
Yeah, so this is a continuation of that
Okay.
last thing. And so the way that you kind of set up our first one is that we are just saying basically what this religion does. So I
Yeah.
think
So
it would be
Mosberg, you
very
can
natural to just
Mosberg in the chat. You can try to interpret this for us. In the there's
mm,
a slight delay between Adam and I here in the chat probably, but I'll read it one more time. It was if I can find it. It was about the other self. Where was that sentence? I just read it. Oh
it
boy.
was paragraph 9 sentence 2 on page 61.
Oh, there it is. Lou raised his eyebrows as he looked wide-eyed at his other self.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So we
Yes.
got a comment. Yeah, Mosberg said, I don't know if you can see the chat, Adam, but he said everyone has a broadcast partner that is their twin, and in quotes other mirror self. So there you go.
Great.
So this is cool. I like this. Do you always use the same book? Like
So because that was ending that
okay.
storyline, a new storyline, you get a new book.
Okay.
So each storyline like contains like passages or grab story prompts from the same book, and then once that one ends, you put that book away for the rest of the game
In
and
case
grab a new
people are
one.
wondering, that book I can't. I tried to hold it up. It won't. It my.
It won't show.
It's not, well, here we go. It's a Wendigo Tales book, which is published by Savage Worlds, basically by Pinnacle, and so a bunch of authors writing in Savage Worlds related worlds. It was the only fiction book I had over there. When I went over to my shelf, I realized they were all TTRPG books. Like that's all, and I was like, well, that's going to be weird. And so who knows what kind of rule we're going to get or something? Which
Right.
maybe that would
Yeah.
have been its own cool thing. Actually, I don't know.
I think it could work. Nobody got a TTRPG book the time that I've played so far. But I think you could get something weird. Somebody did grab a book that was he didn't know we were playing at my apartment and he didn't know any of our books and grabbed one, no words in it. This is a comic book. Or I guess so there were a couple of words. And
Yeah.
so he was like, I don't know how to pick a paragraph here. And I was like, you just gotta know what what a paragraph is. And it also worked. So
So let me
uh
ask you a question. How do you? One of the things I was wondering, because again, my mind went to like my Saturday night game club, right?
mm,
Which is like the easiest place for me personally to like drop new games on my table. Like this is where I'm going to be introducing people to new games. But in that context, we don't have books, right? Like the space that we play in, there's not
mm.
shelves of books. So maybe it's just a game that doesn't work in that space, or maybe like you have to just bring a pile of books.
You could either bring a pile of books. You could use like PDFs on your
Oh,
phone.
that's good.
Um,
That's good.
I'm working on trying to refine a good Wikipedia role
Oh, okay. Oh,
because I
that's
think that
kind
could
of
be a lot of fun.
awesome, actually. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. The current idea is like the first number you generate will give you like how many random articles you're allowed to click. The second one will be how many links you're allowed to click through, and then section, and then like sentence.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
And I think that would work out. It would be a little bit less because you're going to a new article for every time you tell a story. I think it'd be maybe a little bit less like cohesive
Yeah.
because you're not pulling from the same book, but also it'd be good, I think.
Well, I mean, the book I happen to grab is short stories, right? So those, I don't even think those two quotes I read were from the same
Oh, really?
short
It's that it
story.
like that's weird because it felt cohesive, but I guess
Well,
that's
it
in
looks
the
like,
context we were putting it in.
yeah, I'm not even looking at this. Let me see. I don't even know. I haven't like actually read this book at all. It does look like at least in these short stories are all in the same world, so that would provide some sort of cohesive sort of structure to them.
Mhm.
Which happens to be again for people who might be wondering, the last parsec, which is a Savage Worlds sci-fi setting you can play in, and apparently also read books, short stories. Anyway, yeah, so I love the idea though of like, so one of the things that we've had a lot of conversations. This show started in April last year, so like, it started in the context of COVID and people playing TTRPGs online more than ever, and I like that it's pushed designers to like do online like design, and I
Mhm.
really like the idea of like a game like where that uses Wikipedia and articles and things like that, to play, because it's like an experience you can only have with the access to the internet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a game. I don't know if you've heard of this, but there's a game called, I think they called it Open World RPG by Adam Vess and Will Jobst.
Yeah,
It's you like get in a Discord call and like hop on Google Street View and just go for a road trip
it's amazing.
where like one player's driving, one player's manning the jukebox, and like all the other players are like just Googling stuff about the town you're in to like get info.
That's freaking
And the one time I
awesome.
played it, it was very fun. Yeah, that was a great time.
I want to experience that so badly now. That sounds like basically what my family did. That's close to what my family did to stay sane during the pandemic anyway. But but we didn't realize we were playing a game.
Right. Still counts.
Yeah, exactly. We were. It points to the fact that play can be basically anything. But yeah, I like the way that game designers are having to take this unique situation that we're in, which is obviously a terrible one, and like using this unique moment to like by necessity basically push the envelope of, I'm trying to say something without making it sound like that COVID's a good thing, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
like,
making the best of a bad situation. It's interesting to see what happens with like in the face of an adversity like this. But like humans are so intent on playing with each other that like we'll find a way to do it.
yeah,
if we can. And it's different. Like playing games online for me, even games as cool as like open world or things that are directly, it's like a whole different experience that like I get a different feeling out of, if that makes sense. Like I noticed like a couple of months into whenever I wasn't seeing anybody in person that like I really recharge a lot of like energy for this kind of interaction online by playing games in person. So like I started the pandemic like, oh, this can be okay. I've got friends like from all different sections of my life that like normally I don't get to hang out with a lot because we live elsewhere.
yeah,
And I like pulled everybody in and we started playing like this big Blades in the Dark campaign that I was running, but like I just fizzled out on it because it's like a lot of energy to keep up to sit at your computer and be social.
yeah.
With even seeing like I see your face, but like I couldn't do this for as long as like we could sit at a table and
Absolutely.
like just BS for a while.
Yes.
But yeah, things that facilitate that and make you kind of forget a little bit that you're sitting at your computer that you've been sitting at all day, all week, all
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice.
It makes you wonder, like I was thinking about streamers who do like actual play streams for like 4 hours.
No, come on. It's too long.
Yeah, it is. And I could not, it's too long, right? It would drive me insane.
I could do it once or twice.
Yeah. I
But,
wonder.
like, not every week.
Yeah. Yeah, right? It makes me wonder if like, but maybe my experience of that is different because I didn't do that before the pandemic. Maybe like before the pandemic, it was easier to do it like once a week because you were constantly not doing it the rest of the week.
Right.
And we just all spent the last 2 years spending so much time on the computer and on Zoom calls and online that now like what we're doing right now, streaming this show, is what we were also doing during the pandemic. At least I was, for like everything, for church, for all of our church related activities, for our game club. I mean, like literally everything in my life was a version of what we're doing right now.
Right.
So maybe in a different context, it would be different. I don't know. But like the idea of doing a 4-hour game on Zoom or on, Twitch sounds horrible to me.
Yeah. At least a regular one. It's
Right.
too much.
Right.
Yeah.
But yet I have friends who play games like the name of the game just totally evacuated from my head. What is the famous sci-fi strategy game that takes like 8 hours to play?
Twilight Imperium?
Yeah, Twilight. Yeah, they play like TI, and
Oh,
and they did it online a whole bunch during the pandemic, and so they must have spent many hours playing. I don't know if any of them are even in this chat. They might be, and they can comment. They can defend themselves. But like,
Oh, they don't have to defend themselves. I envy it, honestly. I wish I had that
Yeah.
reserve of energy.
Yeah. I felt the same way though. Like I felt like it was draining for me So like I got by the end of like when we were running our game club. So we've been running our game club in person again, with a lot of precautions, and like we've done things like requiring vaccinations and stuff, and now we're at a turning point where we have to decide. We canceled an event already, and we have to decide like, are we back on hiatus? Are we back online?
Yeah.
But during the end of like when we were online only before we went back to any in person, by the end of that, I was like, I don't want to keep doing this anymore. I'm done. I can't. Like, it's so draining to do this every week, which is sad because it's play. Like, you want it to be life giving,
Right.
but
It's fun. Like, it was the kind of thing that whenever I managed to get myself into it, I always had fun.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Sure.
but it was that like lead up, like, I don't think I could sit down and do it. It's not happening. Because at that time I was still working a job. So like that required me to be on my computer for like 8 hours plus doing work that I hated.
Yeah.
And whew, that's
Yeah,
over now.
that's
I
rough.
quit that job.
Okay, so I was going to ask you: are you just doing game design full time now?
I am hoping to, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm currently doing,
Right.
and then, monitoring my savings to see if I need to stop trying to do that.
Yeah.
But I have a little bit of time this year to see if I can do it, to see if I can sustain it. And I'm hoping I can, because I'm having a lot of fun. It's been a lot nicer to like work on stuff I care about every day.
Yeah. As
Yeah.
opposed to like working for somebody else to make money or something, like as a lot of
Yeah,
people
working
say.
for a soulless corporation that none of it mattered. I was good at it, but like I didn't do it really.
Mm-hmm.
For at least the last year, I don't think I put in any effort, which like sounds like it's cool, but there's still that like pressure to like at least be present.
Mm-hmm.
So like even though I wouldn't do anything for like 8 hours every day, I would just be there, and if like my boss sent me a message, I would respond to it quickly and be like, oh yeah, I'm getting to that. And like it sounds like, oh, you could just kick back, relax, play some video games or whatever, but like that's not quite, because there's just still these pressures to try to do things even if you can't, and it drained me. And I just
I
ended
don't
up
think
having
human
to
beings are
get out of
meant
that.
to like the idea of like, for anyone who thinks it might sound cool, I don't think they're thinking realistically about what that situation is, because like human beings aren't meant to like not you like, I mean, the fact that now you are working for yourself game designing, right, proves the point, because like you want to be doing something. Like, you like, human beings aren't meant to just not do anything. Like, to be in a
Right.
situation where you are required to do something by your job, but you have zero desire to because you hate it so much, is like, that's a hell.
And-
like, it's a kind of hell.
And
to
also
be in.
there's, in my case, there's like barely any consequences for not doing it, because I was good enough at it that like, and my boss liked me. So like those two combinations made it so like, okay, once a week I'll like put in a half hour, and that's like enough. Yeah, it's not. It sucked.
Yes.
It was so unfulfilling.
Exactly. Well, why don't we back up a little bit? And we, usually one of the first things we do on the show is talk about someone's TTRPG like origin story or backstory. We spent the last hour talking about the game, so let's talk about you a little bit more to get people to get to know you a little bit. Like, tell us your TTRPG origin story. How did you get started playing games like these kinds of games?
So it was kind of a slow progress. And when I was in college, a friend of mine, like the first thing I ever did was my friend and roommate, still friend, no longer roommate, because he no longer lives in Philadelphia. I was gonna say he lives out by you, but
Oh.
nope. He'll be back.
Okay.
He like got all of me and the other roommates to like play in D&D 4th edition, because that's the one that there was at the time, and that was fun. I like enjoyed playing it. It did a thing that a lot of role-playing game campaigns do, especially in college, I would guess, which is to say it fizzled out like nearly immediately. A few sessions in, everybody's having a good time, and then it never gets scheduled again, and nobody says anything.
Yeah.
So there was a couple of those throughout college, and then that was about it. And then out of college, same thing. Like I joined a Pathfinder campaign that a guy I met at work was running. That fizzled. A lot of that stuff. And then eventually I joined a 5th edition campaign that was not fizzling, but I moved back to Pittsburgh. And around that same time, a friend of mine was trying to get me to play Fiasco, which I like kind of enjoyed, but didn't really get,
Mm.
which is confusing to me in hindsight because I love Fiasco now. But I guess the 2015 version of me wasn't quite ready to not just play board games all the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. But yeah, eventually I like moved back to Pittsburgh, started playing D&D again. I started running it, and was playing in a long-standing campaign that's still going, actually.
Wow, that's cool.
That a different friend of mine is running. So it's just a lot of like random campaigns. And then whenever I eventually started running it, I think that because like running a game, no matter the game, if you're GMing, you're doing some game design, even if you don't know it.
Yeah.
If you're making a dungeon, like you're thinking about game design. If you're trying to balance an encounter, you're doing game design.
Mm-hmm.
All of these in like the trad games. And so that stopped at some point. And I think that part of my brain just like wanted to keep working, but I didn't really start a new campaign.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was about like a year into me like discovering other games, like, you know, the standard entries like a Blades in the Dark, other more indie games. And so I don't know, I just eventually started making them. And now here I am.
I love the transition, and I don't know. Eventually, I just started making them, and now here I am. But yeah,
it got a habit. And when the pandemic, like I was doing it, I ran my first Kickstarter before the pandemic. That would have been in 2019. Would that have been? It's not important. No, it would have been 2020. Yeah. So I ran that in 2020, and then the pandemic started. So like I immediately like went and found on more online communities to hang out in. And the more time you spend around people that are designing games online, which was most of the time because I was sitting in my house talking to people on the internet, the more time you spend with them, the more you're like, this is just what I do. I just have fun with this. And now here I am. There we go.
yeah. So there's sort of two gateway drugs then for design, right? Like there's the gateway drug of GMing, which is sort of the maybe that's not a sensitive way to put it, saying gateway drug. Now that I'm saying it, I'm realizing, but there's sort of the gateway activity of doing it, which is GMing or DMing a game, and then the second one, where I feel is maybe even more potent, is hanging out with people who design games, talking to people who design games. And reading rule books a lot, which I guess is related to like GMing. Like I find the more rule books I read, the more design ideas I have.
Right, which I definitely, the part that went unsaid in all that is playing an absolute a ton of board games. That like I started playing those in college and haven't really stopped since. And I'm always the one that is teaching them. So that means I'm always the one reading the rule books and like internalizing the mechanics and then explaining the mechanics in a way that everybody's still having fun by the time we start playing. So
I feel like this is something that hasn't come up a lot in my conversations with designers, is the intersection, the commonality between the board game community and board game design and role-playing game. Like it should be almost obvious, and there's a lot of examples of games that are like crossing over between them. And we talked about, well, I mean, yours have elements, right? We could talk about that crossover between them. You know, a game like what is The Quiet Year? Is The Quiet Year a board game, or is The Quiet Year a role-playing game? And I think you could like, it's neither and both. It's like, right? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So like, I don't feel like I've gotten into this too much.
It's an interesting like gap between the two that at first blush seems like they're the same. Like there should be tons of crossover.
Right.
But like it's a place that I want to explore more as time goes on. Obviously, Grasping Nettles has a game board.
Right.
But like the thing that I have come to be, or the thing that I think about a lot, is that a lot of mechanics in board games that like in modern board games aren't that great can work like super well in a board gameized RPG. So Grasping Nettles is a roll and move game, like at its core. Nobody likes a roll and move game in the board game world, but in the RPG world, like our fun is taking a big 20-sided die and getting a random number, and then we're like, we're loving it. So like people don't like roll and move in a board game because it's too random. In an RPG, give me random shit. Sorry, I don't know if we can swear.
Oh, you can swear all you want. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, great. I'm sure you get asked that every time.
It's not that holy here at Holy Happy Hour. You're good. You're good.
But yeah, so like I think that's why there's not as much crossover because Quiet Year, another example, great RPG, but like nobody would play a board game that you brought to them that it's like, I guess people might, but nobody would say it's a good board game if it's just draw a card and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But in an RPG, draw a
Right.
card and tell me what happens. Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. Draw it on a map. Tell me what happens and draw it. That's we love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
it's interesting.
I think a lot of it comes down to there's that, and then there's the fact I don't know how much like a lot of board game people know about indie RPGs. So a lot of it is just a visibility thing,
Mm.
and vice versa. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting space to explore and think about, and I've definitely thought about it a lot.
Yeah. So have you ever played Fog of Love?
I have played a demo of it
A
at a
de-
convention.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the podcasts that I do, it's currently on hiatus with my wife and with other people, is called Pot of Love, and it's on our network. It's a we do roll. Basically, it's basically a rom com actual play. But we started it because we played Fog of Love at PAX Unplugged in 20. What year was that? 2018, 2017, 2017. It was, yeah, 2017. I think. Anyway, it was one of those. It was so basically I'm kind of droning on about it, but we went and saw Shut Up and Sit Down live at PAX Unplugged, and they raved about this game, which we were like, we got to go demo it immediately. They were like, this is one of the best board games we've ever played. So we demo it, decide to launch an AP, basically like taking that game and like really squeezing every possible ounce of role-playing game out of
Right,
what
which
it
it-
offers.
For my play like short playthrough of it, it kind of gets in the way of that. Right, like you really have to squeeze to get that out of there because it seems at first blush that it's very story driven, but it's kind of a points game, isn't it? Isn't there like a winner, or there's something with points? I can't remember exactly. I'm foggy on it.
So kind of, there is, in the sense that you are trying to see if you can achieve your like goal at the end of the game that you have. You kind of like you got like a personal goal basically that you are like, you can kind of swap that card out as you're playing it. The winner, you say winner, it kind of is in the sense that like you don't know what the other person's goal is going to be as you're playing, and you're trying to and there is points in the sense of like there's like happiness points. I can tell you that our podcast exists as a proof that you can like play it essentially like
you
a
definitely
role-playing
can.
game.
Yeah,
but obviously,
yeah.
like you're saying, you have to really squeeze.
Yeah.
But we eventually, eventually doing the show, we got to know Jacob Jaskoff, who made the game, and like befriend him, and like we had a lot of conversations with him after that, and we were talking about like the origins of that game, and he told us that it started out as a role-playing game. It was going to be, he started designing a role-playing game that got more and more board game as it went, and eventually crossed over to like more board game than role-playing game, but still sort of walked the line between them. And I thought that was just like a fascinating sort of thing, one of the things I like about the idea of intersecting the two is one of the things that board games have a lot to offer with it, which is like being able to sit down and play it without a lot of prep or no prep basically, other than reading the rules, but also like presenting you all these really nice items that you often place before you, which give you this real tactile thing to latch onto, especially if you've never played it before and you're playing with someone else who hasn't played it before. Like the game, like having a board or having like stuff between you, it kind of invites you into the same space, right? Like in a way that sometimes RPGs are struggle to do, or like make a
Like,
barrier.
yeah.
Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
we don't do enough boxes with
Yeah.
stuff in them.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like For the Queen is
Yeah.
a good example of a game that like I can show up to a board game night with For the Queen and have people accidentally playing an RPG, and like I don't even have to tell them that that's what they're doing.
Exactly.
Because it's just like this perfect little, like you said, this tactile thing. And you slam it in the middle. You're like, oh, pick the prettiest picture, and then answer this question, and then you're playing. Yeah, that stuff is inspiring to me for sure. Because I like the idea of these tactile things that I love about board games coming into this other space and like hopefully bringing people across. Because yeah, a game like Fog of Love it tells a story, but when I said you have to like ring it out, I meant like more if you want to tell like a more of a freer ish story that we're used to in like an RPG. That's what you got to ring. But you could follow the cards and I think get something also super interesting.
Well, you know, you kind of touched on, it has a similar problem you touched on with the Quiet Year, right? Like, you know how you mentioned that the Quiet Year has like that, like those cards that you're like, oh, we're going to see what this one does. What is this prompt going to do in this game? For me in the Quiet Year, that's always like the young girl. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's the card that's like the young girl, like a young girl emerges in the community. And like, I forget what the two options are. Like one of them is like, she's like ostracized. Oh, she teaches some sort of like, she teaches something that's like edgy and like, makes her different from the community, or she like does something really good for the community. I think are the two basic options. Like that one isn't, that one in the games I played is like a notorious card. Like it always does something crazy. Is the young girl card. But like Fog of Love was sort of the same way, right? Like there's only so many prompts in the game. And eventually we had to like remove some of them from our decks because we were seeing them too often for an actual play podcast. Like you can only have a triple rainbow happen so many times.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, so we had to get rid of, so like that's the limitations that a game like that has.
So yeah, I think that's the thing that's interesting is that if you take it from a board game angle, like that stuff is fine in a board game. Like if I play Dice, I'm looking at my game shelf. If I play Dice Hospital, it's like the same. It's a game where you build a little hospital and heal dice. It's pretty good. It's the same like doctor cards every time, but I don't care. I want the little mechanic that's on it.
Right.
But like, yeah, like you're saying, if it was a game about like telling the story of this hospital, like I'm sick of this ear, nose, and throat doctor.
Right.
Let's get a different kind of doctor in this story, huh?
Exactly.
So it's an interesting challenge if you want to make something kind of in that Fog of Love type zone.
Yeah.
That is, replayable, but also it scratches some of that board game itch. And I think that's something that I would like to address at some point in the future with a game.
Do you feel like Fiasco sort of does that too, or is that too role play?
That's a good question. I have not played the card game version.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
I would assume that does it a lot more. But also half the reason I haven't played the card game version is because it is more limited in that way. I've heard that it's better and smoother and a much nicer gameplay experience, but you're limited by the cards that you get.
Right.
Whereas I could download one of 10 billion Fiasco play sets and have a different time every time from the first edition. You know? But I mean, how many times have I played Fiasco? Probably not more than they have printed play sets for the boxed edition. So what am I complaining about?
Well, it's sort of what I was thinking. Like I've only played Fiasco like twice. And like, yeah. So if you only play it 2 or 3 times, you're not going to really have that problem. So maybe part of the problem with Fog of Love was that we were doing it specifically for a medium where we were going to be doing it again and again and again, and then and then like it's gonna get a little old in that sense. So maybe it's not. It's a little. So I do think it's a design problem, but it's not one that's a huge problem unless you're playing a game over and over and over again.
You put it through a test that like it wasn't designed to handle. So not necessarily a flaw in the design,
right?
But a gap. Maybe a gap is a nicer word.
Yeah. I was taking a car that wasn't designed for a racetrack, and I was putting it to race, and it just wasn't quite designed for that. I was testing its limits in a way that they didn't necessarily intend. Yeah. So chat in the chat, Mossberg said you can only go to Italy on a whim so many times too. That's one of the cards in that game, right? Like something like that. Like when it happens a second time, if you've been paying attention, you remember it happening the first time pretty distinctly, because it's pretty, yeah. It's cool when it happens in your game of Fog of Love and you're never playing it again. But like,
Right.
but when you play it like 4 or 5 times and then, oh great, now this couple's going to Italy on a whim. Like it's not
They're always
exactly
going to Italy.
yeah, it doesn't exactly work for that so well, unless you're willing to be extremely open with interpreting the cards.
Yeah, what does Italy really mean? Olive Garden, maybe?
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
But so the thing that I can actually loop this back to
Yeah.
Legend Has It.
Perfect.
Which my first thought, I was going to just write prompts on all the cards. And then immediately when I thought about it, I was like, that doesn't work. I was like, well, what if I write really vague prompts but still not quite as good? And that's where eventually the book thing came out of. I was like, where can I get infinite prompts that I don't have to write, especially? And yeah, it was kind of like this exact problem that I was trying to kind of prevent from happening in my game.
Like replayability. That's really interesting. Like you could do vague prompts, but then you do still have that quiet year conundrum, right? And
Right, and this is like a much quicker game to play than the Quiet Year. Like the Quiet Year, I think earns its place to have those same prompts every game because it's like a whole event to play a full game of the Quiet Year.
Absolutely.
It's long, it's like wonderful. It goes through these 4 phases of play in such a nice way that like, yeah, when the girl card comes up and she's making a damn mess again, like that's great. We're happy to see it. But a game like Legend Has It, which I want to be more in the vein of like that party game sort of atmosphere, or more in the vein of like the For the Queen. Although For the Queen does prompts and it doesn't get old.
Well, that could just be because Alex is such an incredible designer that her games are like, I don't even know how to describe the smoothness and polish to her design is one that mystifies me.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just Alex wrote the perfect questions in For the Queen, and there are enough of them, and they're in a random order.
Yep.
I'm good at a lot of things in game design, and writing the perfect questions is not one of them.
Well, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do at all. It's like to be like you think it seems easy, right? Write vague prompts. Well, that seems easy enough. Anybody can write vague prompts. Writing the perfect vague prompts,
Right.
Even, and I'm designing a 2-player breakup game, and so I considered like scene prompts, kind of like there are in Starcrossed. You know, like in Starcrossed, you have these like 1 or 2 word prompts that are they're absolutely perfect, and in that game they're always in the same order, and yet they make you tell a different story every time that has a beautiful arc that's unique to each single time you play, and somehow you're using the same prompt every time. Like it's just like that's got to be just like a level of natural design, like, you know, like a level of design that is really hard to get to. I mean, it's like just a masterful level of design, I feel like.
Yeah.
Not easy to do is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. And especially, I mean, the difference between those two, like For the Queen having so many prompts,
right,
which is I think how a little bit gets away with that, but like Starcrossed having so few that it's like, oh, we're playing Starcrossed, we know we're going through these. It's like 2 completely different ways to tackle that problem, and both done really well.
So there's a suggestion here, a question in the chat. What about being prompted by images? Would that be something you might consider as a digital version of prompts? I guess as opposed to the like books.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in that. How would you?
Yeah.
I guess the question would be, how would you direct the players to a way to like randomly get the images?
That's a good question.
There's definitely a way.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know it off the top of my head.
Well, so there's
there's
that one app that you can like, but you have to have a word to put in. That Wombo app. You know what I'm talking about? The Dream, I think it's called, where you can create random
AI
artwork.
apps.
Yeah, AI. It's like an AI, but you have to have a prompt. You still have to have a word prompt to put in to get the AI image. So that doesn't even completely solve the problem.
You could Ooh. So now I'm thinking, what if you played Legend Has It with like Dixit cards or the cards from Mysterium?
Oh, yeah.
I
Oh,
might
the
have
cards
to.
from Mysterium would be really interesting because
Yeah,
they're buck wild.
they're weird.
And it would give you some really fascinating results.
Mm.
There's also like apparently I just googled it. There's like a random pictures. Let's see, randomwordgenerator.com. But this says yeah, you can do random pictures. So like number of pictures, like let's say I do 10. Generate random pictures. Yeah, I mean you could just do something like that, right? And that could be like the fifth picture or something. Um, maybe you type. Maybe it's like. The first number is like the number of pictures you randomly generate, and then the second number is like the number of picture down, like it would be the 10th picture down, and like in this
Yeah,
case that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
I've got
8.
some real weird pictures on
Yep,
here because I pulled it up too.
there you go. So this is a picture of a pilot like standing underneath an airplane with a gas mask on or air mask on. Like so there you go. So that could be a way of doing it, I suppose.
I've got a toy lizard with a cigarette butt in its mouth.
Bingo.
What does it mean?
Interpret that for this myth that you're making.
Oh,
So yeah, I mean, I guess that would be a way to potentially, potentially play, and a way to potentially play if you don't have books,
yeah.
I suppose. Yeah, Mossberg suggested random images can be done with Flickr too, so I guess there's like ways to do
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I would like to come up with more of this stuff, or like have more of these options because I think there's so much information on the internet, on our bookshelves, everywhere that we can pull from. Like, why not go for it? Why not go to randomwordgenerator.com/picture and make a game out of it? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, but you did design so like a game like this is obviously seems like it's more designed for in person, where you have like a bookshelf, and you have got physical cards in front of you. But you did create you are creating an online version of Legend Has It too, right? So people can play it in online.
yeah, so it'll be if the website's playingcards.io, which is if you've ever got a game that is just cards that you want to play, that's the website to do it on, as it says in the name. It's like really good for cards. So I currently have like all of my playtest files uploaded into that, which is what I shared with you.
Right.
And it seems like it plays just fine. It'll be like a little awkward with the prompt reading. It'll be like if we're using your book, like you just have to read the prompt, even if it's me that's telling that part of the story. But I think that's no less clunky than like trying to figure out how to roll a perception check or something like that in Roll20.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's definitely not more clunky than say using something like Roll20 to move miniatures around the board or something
Right,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a certain level of this isn't quite working the way you want it to that comes with playing online games
Right.
or online physical games.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is one mode that I have that I want to test out at some point that's like a kind of a rotating cast mode. So basically the idea is you'll figure out how many people want to play, and then stack like pre-seed the deck to have exactly that many storylines that start and finish, and then have the game end on like the very last, whenever everybody's had one storyline. And so then they come in, they bring their book, and they're the only one telling that storyline, so they have their book and they're reading the prompts for the storyline, and when that one ends, when the cards say that one ends, you shuffle them out the door and then they sit and listen to everybody else's stories.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to do that, maybe get like a bunch of people on for that'd be a good mode for a stream if you've got a bunch of people like that are sitting around in a Discord call, and then they can hang out and chat while everybody else goes.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be really cool. It also would be good for like a big party game environment too, right? Like if like say you're in a game club situation like mine, and you have like 20 people, and you're gonna like kind of do like a big group storytelling experience where most of the time you're just gonna be hanging out and listening, but then you'll have your turn to share. That's cool.
Yeah. Come on in. It's your turn, but like I don't know, the times that I've played it so far,
Yeah.
some of my favorite moments are the times that I'm not doing anything,
Yeah.
which I was happy to see because it was like, oh yeah, come on, tell me, because it
Mm.
really, the way that the turn structure is like you read the prompt and then you are interpreting it for the table.
Mm-hmm.
It really like brings back like kind of just like sitting around and telling stories to each other
Yeah.
vibes, as opposed to a lot of RPGs where it's like we're telling it together.
Right.
It's like no, tell me a story. Tell me what happens. I want to hear about it. I don't have to do anything, and it's really nice.
Yeah, I just it makes me think of a random tweet I saw that Jade Dragon had tweeted like there's not enough bonfires in TTRPG except for that didn't mean in a game, it meant like just like sitting around a bonfire
Yeah,
in TTRPG talking about game design around an actual bonfire, but that is sort of the feel that this game has potentially has to me, where you're like listening to people make and tell. There's something primitive and primal about that, right? Like this idea of like telling myth in that sort of
mhm.
space. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's that definitely happens in Grasping Nettles too. So I
Yeah.
clearly love that too.
Yeah, and this is a shame we're sort of stepping into this right at the end of our time here, because like that to me is something that I often think, not in the way of like making it up whole cloth like you do in these games, but the just the sort of act of doing that I often think is one of the things that's missing from modern religion. So like in my own experience of like Christian faith, for example, because that's my context, like I often think that we are so divorced from the stories we tell that they no longer function the way myths are meant to, like in the way that you're sharing a story that has meaning to it, right? Like, and when you do it, so like almost like this game almost has more of that than actual religion, because we become so separate and divorced from the stories, or we can be anyway oftentimes from
Yeah,
the myths that we're sharing, and that's one of the things that I think is missing from a lot of modern religion in a bad way.
yeah, yeah. I think I would agree. The default mode, at least, I grew up Catholic, and I'm not that
Sure.
anymore, which I think is a fairly common
Yeah.
path
Yeah, it
because
is.
of basically exactly what you're saying. It's just so divorced from anything that it should be
Mm.
part of. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's thoughts that are kind of like I haven't thought about in a while, so I can't exactly
Yeah.
explain it well. But yeah, like always got the feeling, like especially growing up, being like, why are you telling me like all of these kind of nice things, and then everything else that you're kind of doing isn't has nothing to do with like any of it. Like I don't know. It's a lot
Yeah.
to try to grasp.
But I think that like the power of what these games replicates in a game way, like in a game space, like in that sort of like golden circle play space, the power of what they do and the energy that that games like this create is the same sort of energy and power that you touch on in religious practice and ritual and story sharing and things like that. And I think I think that it has a similar anthropological and psychological function, and like I think that's why these games are good. And I think it's why we like to play them, because there's something
Mhm.
about us as human beings that draws power from that and like
Yeah.
gains meaning from that. And like it, well, I mean, and this is probably maybe a good note to end on, but like religion is becoming less and less relevant every day. In It's easy for people who are religious to blame that on society and not realize that like, well, maybe the thing that you're offering is no longer presenting something powerful and meaningful to
Right.
people anymore, and so hence why they're not going to it anymore. But anyway, that's that's a whole nother conversation that we obviously don't have time for. But we are, since we are at the end of time, tell us where people can find you and the stuff you do on the internet, including but not limited to the Kickstarter.
Yeah, I am Adam Bell. So you can find me on Twitter at Adam E. Bell. You can follow me there, get all the links easier there. But you can get the games. The adamebell.games will link back to my itch page. Kickstarter.adamebell.games will link you to Legend Has It right now until in the future, if I ever run another Kickstarter, it'll go to that one.
Sure.
Um, What else? Yeah, we mentioned the Tabletop Call-In show. I do
Yes.
that. You can follow that on Twitter at Tabletop Call-In. That's where my friend Jeremy Gage and I sit down, and every other week we take calls, which is to say we open a Discord that anybody can hop into and like chat with us about whatever topic in games that they want. And then the other weeks, including this week, which was today,
Right.
we just chat, the two of us, because it's easier to chat with. I mean, a lot of the people that call in are our friends also, but it's easier to just chat with the one friend than to be on. So we like to do it every other week.
Cool.
Um, yeah, so tune into that. Call in Mondays at 11 a.m. Eastern, or it's on YouTube afterwards if you want.
Yep. Did you say it's every other Monday?
It's every Monday. Every
Okay.
other Monday is when the calling in
Gotcha.
happens.
Gotcha. I want to make sure I got that straight.
But the
So-
show is every Monday.
So next Monday would be a call-in week.
Yes.
All right, cool.
Yes, it
Yeah.
will.
One of these weeks I got to remember. I'll have to remember to call into the show. That'd be fun.
Okay.
That would be super fun. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show, and people should keep our eye out for the Kickstarter for Legend Has It when it drops later on this month, whenever that will be. But it'll be sometime before the end of the month, right?
Yeah, it should be sometime before the end of the month. I would like to get the Grasping Nettles copies out of my hair and mind before I enter another Kickstarter venture.
Yeah.
So that I don't have a specific date, but hopefully soon.
Great. So all those links,
Definitely by the end of the month. Yeah.
awesome. All those links that we just mentioned are, or at least most of them, including the Ko-fi.com link and that stuff that I think we didn't even mention, I dropped in the chat, and I'll make sure they're in the show notes for this afterwards. So Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I'm going to ask Adam to hang out back here in my so-called digital green room, aka Zoom call, and then I'm going to bring us to the end of the show here. So let me just do that. All right. Well, yeah, like I said, huge thanks to Adam for taking the time to come on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about the Kickstarter. Can't wait to see Legend Has It in action. Grasping Nettles is super exciting. And even though Legend Has It was sort of the prompt for bringing Adam on the show, I am super excited to bring Grasping Nettles to my own game club. And I think they're going to love it. So maybe you'll hear me talk more about that on this show in the future if we go ahead and bring that to the table. But yeah, so make sure you check out the Kickstarter link and all the other links that are here in the chat in the show notes. Please don't forget, speaking of following things, to hit the follow button here on Twitch if you're watching this, or subscribing to the channel. You could subscribe on Twitch, and then I think on YouTube it is called subscribing all of the time. Whatever you do on YouTube, Facebook, if you're watching this, I don't think you can subscribe, but you can like our page. If you only caught part of tonight's show, you will be able to head to allportsopen.com. That's allportsopen.com to watch every episode of the show after the fact. You can also, like I said, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can check out the whole playlist of all the Happy Hour Batman shows. From the first episode where Alex Roberts was on the show, who we talked about in this episode, all the way to tonight when Adam was on the show. You can watch every episode there on that playlist at YouTube, All Ports Open Network on YouTube. We also have other great shows on our network that you can check out, like the one we're going to be rating into here in just a minute. So huge thanks to Joshua Wise, my Apon co-founder, for the artwork here on the stream that you're seeing right now, everything he does for our network. Thanks to Dr. Octorok for the use of his music on the show. Dr. Octorok is a fabulous 8-bit chiptune artist and does other all kinds of art mediums. Actually, you should check out Dr. Octorok's work out there online. So I'm That Gamer Priest, Ben. We'll be back, same bat time, same bat channel, next week with game designer Samantha Lee. We're going to be talking about her game Anamnesis and other games that she's designed and whatever else comes up, just like this week was. So that'll be here. So again, next Monday night, same bat time, same bat channel. So, okay, enjoy the holiest and happiest of hours, my friends. Happy New Year. As I said, don't go anywhere because it's time for the worst days. From Apon Games and allportsopen.com. I'm going to put you into, I think, a Delinquent Comics ad because I forgot to get rid of it from the thanks for watching. Oh no, I have a thanks for watching stream. I'll put the thanks for watching screen up. Don't go anywhere, and then I'm going to throw you right into the Worst Days Monday Night Horror game. Don't leave. Stick around. It's an awesome game, awesome cast. So again, thanks for watching, and we're going to raid in just a minute. Don't go anywhere.